Hi, it's Polly with Get Busy Thriving. In this video I want to talk about self-trust, and I've been studying this topic along the lines of self-trust and confidence and things like that, and I just want to focus specifically on self-trust and help you understand a little bit about what self-trust is, trusting yourself, and then ways to rebuild that trust, right? So it's a little bit like a bank account or muscles, you might say, and so there's things that we do to add to our self-trust, trusting ourselves and feeling confident in who we are and living to our ideals. And then there's things that we do to erode that, but it absolutely can be rebuilt. So there's a great book out there that I've come upon. It's called The Courage to Trust by Cynthia Wall. And these are some of the markers she has of people who have clear signs of self-trust. So check in with yourself and see if these resonate. Like, am I trusting myself? So they're aware of their thoughts and feelings. So self-awareness of their thoughts and feelings. They're not just kind of mindlessly going through life. And by that, it could be just ignoring, right? Like they've shut down what's going on in their internal dialogue. They've shut down and no communication with their own feelings and what they need, because a lot of where the study of self-trust has come from for me, and what I'm learning in the research is that self-trust is something we're born with. Like, children just know their internal compass. Like, they know what's right for them, right? The younger they are, the more certain they are about things that they want, things that they don't want. Yes, 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 no, 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 right? And we as adults train them out of trusting themselves most of the time, right? So we trust them out of knowing what's right for them and what they want, and we get them to listen to us, right? Like, we know better, or listen to me, or else, or do this thing, or I have your best interest at heart, or I know what it takes, whatever, right? And so we train our young ones. We were trained by the adults around us to stop trusting ourselves, to stop listening to ourselves, to stop knowing that intuitively, like what we need intuitively, but also what we're thinking and what we're feeling, right? It's like, no, 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 don't do that. Like, even like a simple one, this seems strange to think about, but I know this was the case when I was young, is if you have to go to the bathroom in grade school, it's like you have to put up your hand and they may say, no, hold it, like you do it later. You can't even trust your own bodily functions, right? Like, no, it needs to be according to some clock or when they say so. So self-trust is, I think, something that we want to re-emerge and re-engage with and rebuild that muscles, especially if you find yourself with a lot of people-pleasing or having weak boundaries or things like that, is because oftentimes we've lost that trust with ourselves. So again, back to Cynthia Wall's markers or signals or signs that someone has self-trust. So be aware of your thoughts and feelings, right? Living by our own standards, our ethics, our morals, what we value, right? Like living from that instead of what someone on the outside, society, our parents, our peers, our spouse, whatever, media, whatever they think, our culture necessarily, but it's checking in with us of like, who am I? What is it I value, right? What does my ethical code say in this case or in this case, and not looking for outside approval or indication of what is an indication for me of like what's right? Caring for yourself first. So self-care is something that I've talked extensively about. So it's putting your own needs first when they need to come first, right? The old classic, when the oxygen mask falls out of an airplane, you don't put the oxygen mask on a loved one or a child first. You take care of yourself and then you help them, right? So self-care first. Knowing mistakes are survivable. I love that. Knowing mistakes, they're going to happen, and they're survivable, and you can get up and move on, right? And it's letting yourself through that, I would say, as well. So they know mistakes are survivable. They can get up and try again. Whether they choose to try again, like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. I tried that. It's not for me. But they know it's survivable. So they take risks. They take actions. They trust that they can see themselves through it. They can correct and continue. They'll figure out what they like or they don't like. And if they like something, they'll keep doing it. Or they'll stop if they don't. They trust in themselves to recover, let's say, from something new or different. They're pursuing goals without stopping or limiting others, right? They're up to what they're up to, but they're not, like making themselves, like hurting people along the way. They trust themselves to know, this goal is worthy of them. And I would add to it, and this wasn't one of Miss Wall's, but I would say they keep promises to themselves, right? They keep promises, they make promises and they keep them, right? Small things, it's those things that champions do in private that allow them to be called champions in public, right? And we as maybe non-superstars or champions in the world, but we are a champion in our own life. And oftentimes the self-talk or the things that we do in private where we think no one's looking, well, that's where moments of self-trust come in. When you say, I'm going to start a new physical routine, or I'm going to apply for that job, or I'm going to keep this appointment I have with someone. And then when we don't do that, that erodes the self-trust. So it's keeping those commitments, especially to ourselves, right? And so with all of this, let's say maybe some of these aren't a strong suit for you. So how can you rebuild your self-trust? How can you begin to rebuild that self-trust? So a couple of things I say is know and like yourself. Know and like yourself. It's getting to know who you are, like not what society says you should be or you ought to be or your inherited conversations from family, society, or whatever, but who you are and what really makes you you. And then liking that person, liking what you find, right? And if there's things that you don't like about yourself, okay, maybe opportunity to change, but you still like yourself for who you are now and understand that you can grow. I would say be you, or as you might say, do you, like doing who you are, like not trying to do or be anyone else's image or model or likeness of what health and fitness are, what how you should dress, or the job you should have, or the career, or the type of mom you should be, or any of that, right? You doing you. That is, I think, living authentically, and that's self-trust, because trusting who I am is enough, who I am is okay. So being self-aware. All right, this goes to, I said earlier about knowing your thoughts and then knowing your feelings. So it's not about ignoring what's going on inside of you, right? We get so trained and conditioned as young adults to listen for the approval of others in order to receive the love that we need. And you know, we're social creatures, so we're always trying to look for ways to compare and fit in and be a love and belonging world, right? Which means we think we have to do what they need. And so we're constantly kind of scouring the people around us for what is okay, or what do they need, or how can I satisfy them or please them. And instead we sort of turn off or we tune out to what's going on inside of us, like nagging impulses or intuitions, or I don't think I should trust this person, or voices, affirming voices, right? And those negative inner critics might be pointing us to something. So it's not about like blatantly ignoring all of that. It's actually really turning up the volume of what's going on inside our inner world, okay? And honoring yourself, right? Being your own best friend is the simplest way I can say that. So honoring and liking and being your own best friend. I think that's pretty obvious after what we said here earlier. So listening to what you need. I'll end with that. So, you know, how to rebuild that self-trust is listening for what you need, right? So knowing that what I need is important, right? What you need is important as well, but it's honoring and trusting myself and taking care of myself first, and honoring if I'm getting a signal from inside like I shouldn't do this, or this isn't okay with me ethically, standard-wise, what have you, knowing that it's okay to trust that intuitive knowing and your own values, your own judgments, like they're valid, right? It's giving them validity. So I hope that some of this you can see, you know, are you trusting yourself? And in any of these tips for how to rebuild your own trust, what can you do? What's one thing in any of those areas that you just heard that maybe you could strengthen or practice or develop? So pick one of those and work maybe the self-trust for 30 days, right? Like pick one thing, stick to it for a week, or pick one different thing each day, but say, I'm going to get into the habit of trusting myself more. How do I do that? And then do it. So I hope this is helpful to you. If it is, please leave me a comment. I enjoy hearing from you. So anything you have to share, please leave it below. Thank you. Enjoy.